Okay, so at this point, you would have completed your, if you have your font designs. You have your final designs for your name tag or keychain. We need to now understand how the laser cutter works so we can get our design ready for the laser cutter. The laser cutter is just a fancy printer where regular printers print in color, they have pigments and inks. The laser cutter prints by destruction and destroys things. And how we give the information to the laser cutter to do this is the image we send the laser cutter both gives it the information of the image, but also gives it the instructions as well. So when we do a laser cutter, some things we already know. We already know how to do a vector. We already know how to do a vector file. We did that in our example where we converted the Pokemon to vector. Shh. But now we need to know when we're doing the laser cutter, we can only give it 3 commands. We can tell it to cut stuff out, we can tell it to raster images or etching, or we can tell it to do a combination of those two. And we do this by getting the laser cutter to be of 3 different colors. And I'll show some examples on my simulator. The most important thing we use the laser cutter for is for cutting. So when we're cutting, see how we have the cup there? We're cutting out the material. To do this, the line has to be in the color of red. Now it has to be RGB red. Do you remember, does anybody know what RGB stands for? Red, green, blue. Yes, it's like the colors you buy when you buy a gaming PC. So yes, RGB, red, green, blue. The laser cutter needs it to be exactly 255 red, which means the maximum red possible. And I'll show you on the thing where we can do that. It has to be maximum red. It has to be maximum red. And the lines have to also be very thin. The lines should always be 0.001 points thick. If it's too thick, it won't work. And I'll show an example of that on my simulator. What this does is it tells the laser cutter, this line you have here, this shape, this vector, if it is the color of RGB red, as in perfect red, and it is the thickness of 0.001, I want you to do a cut command following this line, following this shape. All right, that sounds like an easy one. The next one is raster. Rastering is if we wanted to do like an area, if we wanted to shade a whole area of our material. So it's like lasering off the very top. So it's also like scratching it. You know, if you get glass or plastic and if you scratch it, it changes the color of it. It's like a lighter color. Or if you have wood and if you burn the top half of it, it's going to be a darker color wood. That's what the laser cutter does if you do the rastering command. For the raster command, it needs to be RGB black, which is 0 red, 0 green, and 0 blue. Also, if you want to raster, if you want to scratch something, it's not going to be the lines. This is going to be an area. So for our designs, that is our fill. If we want it to be that, we can fill it. So see over here with this cup. See how this black line's over here? That would come out in this rastering on this cup down here. The next one is blue. Blue does a very thin line, but it doesn't go all the way through the material. And we call this vector edge. Sorry, vector etch. So it has to be RGB blue. It has to be 00225, so 100% blue and nothing else. And it has to be the same thickness of the vector cut, which is 0.001. This is great for doing little details inside the line. So if you're on your name tag, imagine if you're doing a border. It's great for a border. If you want somebody to have like writing, like text or running writing, and you want it to be very thin, it's great for that. It's great for little patterns. It is not good at doing a large area because again, it wants to be a very thin line. So almost think of it like an outline on your design. The next thing we're going to consider, which will be later when we do our project, is we have all these images. When we place it on the laser cutter will always do the rastering first and then it'll cut out the line. So this is more an issue for me when I put all our designs in the laser cutter, I want to get all the rasterings up the top of the laser cutter. So when it burns that material and all the smoke happens, it's not going to affect the rest of the models because the exhaust fan of the laser cutter is up the top. So it's going to be dragging all that smoke out. Also, the laser cutter cuts faster if it goes left to right. So that's why a good example is we have it all loaded up over here. So that being said, let's look at our affinity design. And I have two examples over here. I have Zapdos, which we did in our previous example. This is a bitmap image of Zapdos. Now, this Zapdos has a lot of colors on it. Let's go and see what happens if I was to print this Zapdos. I'm going to go to File, Print. So this is how I would print it if I was on the laser cutter machine. Now, obviously, I don't have the laser cutter here, but I have the software that the laser cutter machine can see. And if I go here and I press Print, and if I go to my laser cutter software over here, this will be what the laser cutter sees. And that's the image of the Zapdos that the laser cutter is going to see. If I zoom in, I can see the laser cutter, even though Zapdos, what color was Zapdos in my file? Yellows, right? Yellow isn't a color that it can understand, right? What the laser cutter tries to do, if you have a color on there, is it tries to think how black is this color? So think of like it tries to convert the color to gray and then as a percentage. So clearly some parts of the Zapdos, like the feet, are more black than the wings. So what it does here, if I zoom in as far as I can, all the laser cutter can do is burn or not burn. So when it wants to do a darker color, it's going to be burning more often. So it has more burn dots next to each other. Okay, this would get me a nice Zapdos. Is it great? No. Let's do something slightly better. I also have my SVG version of Zapdos. And actually what I'm going to do over here to get a better understanding is I'm going to copy and I'm going to put both the Zapdoses next to each other. So the Zapdos on the right will be the SVG Zapdos that we did in our class lesson before. And if I go again, if I print this, okay. And it's time to upload to the printer. So there are our two Zapdos. If we zoom in, what are some differences we already see with the Zapdoses? Yes. Yeah, so what does that mean for the print? What is the laser cutter seeing different? Yeah, it's more, the darkness on the edges is stronger. So the laser cut, this is going to get a much better laser image, and that's why we bothered vectoring our drawings before. And so that corner is dark, and so see how the edge, it comes out really good there. Well, over here it's kind of dull. So it's going to get a much better image. But it's also, this is just rastering, so this is not going to cut out of the material. So we need to go, can I do it here? Let's see. Can I select... Oh, I don't think I can select it, can I? I won't do it to the whole Zapdos, but just say this edge over here, this, can I make this RGB? That's not RGB colors. How do I do RGB color? Here, I want, color. Here we go, yes. We want it to be fully red, which over here is FF0000. So, yeah, FF0000. The FF means 255. So if I want it to be full RGB red, and I want this particular part over here, FF, is that going to work? So now, see how this edge over here is fully red? We'll see if this works now. If I go to here, and if I go and print this, I'll see what comes up. Print. Okay. Did it work? No, it didn't work. Okay. So what happened over here? Was it the thickness maybe? Maybe the thickness was wrong. Okay, that's not going to work. So when we had to do our drawings, and you did this with your pen tool, you were doing your curvy lines around the corners. So let's just say I finished like this. Okay, we did our curvy lines in that tutorial. If I want that to be the corner that I cut out, I need to make my color for this. I need to make the border. So what's it called? The stroke. I need to make the stroke 255 red, so it's very red, and I have to make its thickness of 0.001. And I think for this one, I have to also delete this. Let's just delete this. We don't need that for now. Did I lose it? Okay, so now I've done that. Let's see if this file prints. Okay. Okay, so here I have my Zapdos, and I haven't done the full border, but I started with it. So over here in our drawing, what do we see in our drawing? We see a red line, because I did that. I did it with the pen. So that's going to tell the laser cutter, obviously do all the rastering, make the whole Zapdos, but then once you finish that, get the laser cutter and burn out the material to cut out this corner. So obviously I did that for the whole thing. I'll get out the whole model of Zapdos, right? So what this means for you, as you're doing your name tags, you need to adjust your image so it works by these parameters. So let's do an example. File, new. This is going to be a basic setup for anybody who's doing a standard rectangular-ish looking name tag. This is going to be basically your tutorial over here. Before we start, one thing I like to do is you press A4 because the size doesn't matter. But what I do want you to do is make sure over here under your color format, you have RGB, either RGB 8 or RGB 16 or 32 or whatever. Just do not have CMYK. We definitely want one of these RGBs selected. So it's going to allow us to do the RGB lines. The first thing I want to do when I do it is I'm going to do a shape. So I can do a rectangle tool or I can do a rounded rectangle tool. I can press my shape. I can drag out my rectangle and I can even change this over here. Let's say I want to be 80 millimeters wide by 30 millimeters high. Done. That's my name tag. And this will be my outside. This is similar to like the Pokemon card tutorial, right? All we got to do is make sure our colors are changed. If we don't want anything on the inside, we're going to change our fill. We can make our fill transparent. And we're going to want our outside. We want to cut out the border. So we're going to change it over here to be FF000. And we want our stroke thickness to be 0.01. 0.01. Okay. And it also disappears. Why does it disappear? View. Mode. Wireframe. When we do it very thin, we may have to adjust our viewing because it doesn't always show up. View mode. Because it's too thin, maybe? Hairline. Huh. So that's my outside border. It is showing up clear, and I think that's because when you do your view mode, if I was to change this mode to, let me show you something. If I make this thick, so if I have this lines over here, when I make it really, really thin, it's going to disappear. So we're going to have to, we'll change the thickness of the lines right near the end of the drawing, just so I can show you for this demonstration. So I have this, then I have this person, I can make this person's name tag, so I can click the text button, press over here. I can change the options I want, like the size. Let's say I want to be size 30. Let's say I want the font. I want something that looks magical. Which one of these texts looks magical? Oh, that looks magical. There we go. That person's name. And let's make it like that. So tell me, class, what color is this? Yes, this is black. So what is this going to do? Which command is this going to give the laser cutter? Yeah. It's going to rust. Yes, it's going to, which is what we want here. We want this fill to be black. I do not want. If I change the stroke to red on the outside, what it's going to do is going to cut a hole. It's going to cut out the border of that text. This video, yeah, I'll upload it to Classroom and YouTube. Yeah, but you don't have access to YouTube yet. I'll shrink this slightly because that's fine. This name's over here. Then the other thing we're going to do is we need a circle to cut out. Because, I have these metal rings, by the way. After the tutorial, I have the bag of metal rings so you can look at them to like help design the shape of your hole. Could I push my name? Shh, no. So I want to do a circle now, and this circle, let's just do 5 by 5. So this circle, I want this circle. It's already perfect. It's already red. So it's going to cut out that hole. That's exactly what I want. So if I bring this, the last thing, do you remember how we did the borders before for the Pokemon card? We're going to do the same thing. I believe at what tool did we use? It was the contour tool, right? Contour tool. We want that shape. We want it to be 3 millimeters, right? Maybe minus 3 millimeters. Minus 3. Cool. Did you get rid of the original one? Is there any way to keep both of them? Was it this command? Force open. I don't think there's a way to keep both of them. So what we'll do is I'll keep it like this. And then before we do the contour tool, I don't think I found a way to keep the border. So before we do the contour tool, I want you to copy and paste. So I press Control C, Control V. So we actually have two. If we look down here in the bottom right-hand corner, I have two rounded rectangles. I'm going to just press one of the rounded rectangles, and this one I'm going to contour. We'll contour this, and I want it to be -2. And so now we have a rectangle inside a rectangle. So someone tell me, class, if I send this to the laser cutter, assuming the thickness is correct, what command is that going to tell the laser cutter for both of those borders? Cut and? Are they the same command? They're both red lines. So what does red lines tell the laser cutter? Cut. So it's going to cut a border, and then it's going to cut another border. So I'm just going to be left with a ring. So I need to change this inside one. Has to be a different command. What do I want to give this command? Yes, RGB blue. 0000FF is RGB blue, not DT, FF. FF. So now it's going to cut the outside border. It's just going to do a line in the inside border. So before I send this to the laser cutter, one thing I want to do is I need to fix my design by changing my stroke thickness, but it's going to disappear on the screen. 0.01, because it's too thin for the screen to register it. I think it's a graphical error, but I can still see if they're there. I can go to view and I can go to mode and I can press hairline, which shows them there, but it doesn't have the color correct. So we'll have to deal with that. So if we go here and I go press print, let's see if this works. Print. If this works, we should have some colors. Okay, let's zoom in and see what we have here. We have red on the outside. It's going to cut the outside. That's wonderful. It's going to cut the blue on the inside. If you actually see, there's a bit of hinting on blue on the edge here. So when I did this design, I must have accidentally did blue over here on the border of the name. So I actually want to change that. I don't want it to be blue there. So I can do that design. But everything else, this can go to the laser cutter and this can print. And can I even do a simulation to see how long it will take? Start. This print will take 2 minutes. Wonderful. Perfect name tag. Now let's do something a bit more advanced, because that's a very basic name tag. A lot of you have images inside your name tag. So I've already done an image here. I'm going to place an image. Do you remember Cookie from the Pokemon cards that we were doing before? We printed out. Open. Place. Cookie's a big bird. Mode. Vector. Alright, so Cookie's huge. Big boy, yes. Maybe is wireframe the right? I don't know. Okay. So this is an image I got, and I believe I SVG'd this already, so it should be high quality. But if I bring that there, can you see that? Oh, hold on. Vector. Oh. One thing I have to fix with this image is the background isn't clear, because this image uh, hmm. Let me fix this again. I might have to make this thickness a bit better. Let me just make this thicker so we can see it, and then I'll thin it up again later. So over here, this image, if we look in the bottom corner, is it going to show up? Hold on. Let me just bring this layer thing up here. Over here, PNG. PNG is not a vectorized image, so I can't really modify this, and it's actually quite big. So what I'm going to do is I am going to use this tool over here. We're going to go vector and image trace. What image trace does is it's going to convert this image into a vector image. Well, it's like all your work done for you. And now this is a vector image. If I actually select it, ooh, I can now zoom in and I can see that these are vector images. And then I can now just get this bird over here and I can drag, oh, hold on. I can select this image and I can drag this image over here. So now I have the person's name and I have the image, and I should be able to, what's the last thing I'll do? Last thing I'll do is change these sizes to, what happens if I do 0.1? Does that work? We'll test it. If 0.1 works, because 0.1 does show up on my screen. File, print. Okay, so here's an example of, okay, the bird worked out, that's great, right? That's perfect, but the border, it thinks it's a black line. because the thickness is 0.1. It's the wrong thickness. So I've got to change to 0.01. Now, unfortunately, with this software, it's difficult. This is a difficult part of this software because I need it to be 0.01 for the printer to read it. But as soon as I bring it to 0.01, you don't see it. So we'll have to do this right at the end. If I find a better option, I'll tell you, but I'll investigate it some more. But I printed this one. Okay, now this is a perfect name tag to be printed. We have the outside border is black, the inside border is blue. The hole here is red. The name rasters out as black, and the picture of Cookie is also going to raster out. So this is going to be a name tag, and let's see how much extra it takes now with Cookie. Oh, it's actually faster somehow. I don't know. Oh, because I didn't do the blue tracing around the name. And that's what you're going to have to do to modify. So I'll pause the recording now.